Spring Television, ours it is.
All right, good morning and welcome to the show this morning, Wednesday, the 25th of January, 2023. It's a midweek edition of the Morning Spring Show, the breakfast show on Western Spring Television, where we start your day by bringing to you what is happening around the world, what is happening around the country, as it affects you as a person, and of course, the things you need to know about what is going on around you and in the country. My name is Emmanuel Ojadegele. You already know what we do for you on the show this morning. We bring you the newspaper analysis, the interview segment, and of course we tell you who is trending, what is trending, why they are trending, and what people are saying about the who, the what, and the why. And like we always say, we pray that things go well for you, that like Femi would say, you have springs in your step every morning, and that you start your day on a very beautiful note. Of course, starting it with us is the most beautiful way you can start your day this morning. And I'm not in the studio alone. It's very beautiful that you start your day with us every morning. Thanks for joining us today on the Morning Spring. I am Temitope Ajujolaoluola. Good morning. Well, thank you for starting your day with us. It appears that the Harmattan is moving away and it's getting hotter now. It's setting fast approaching. So now it's no longer heavy clothing, maybe light clothing to mitigate the effect of the blistering heat. Well, we'll move straight to the papers, but that will be after this break. We'll bring you what's happening on the national dailies.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever is pounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast, detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
All right, welcome back to the show. It's time to go straight to the national dailies and tell you what's on the faces of these national dailies. Bring you these stories. We'll start with the Punch newspaper this morning. The Punch newspaper says its banner headline has a new Naira deadline. Kano, Ondo, Anambra depositors flood banks with old notes. As on page 31, and the number of riders says CBN shuns National Assembly, insists on January 31 cash swap deadline. EFCC, ICPC won't arrest huge depositors. Emefiele assures bank customers. Central Bank officials, POS agents set up rural cash exchange points. Those are the riders under that story this morning on the Punch newspaper, following the decision of the CBN and the MPC yesterday after their meeting.
Yes, I've always wondered what is with Nigerian deadlines, we have to wait till it gets to this very late hour before we start seeing people getting serious about issues like this. It happened with the N9, it happened with the BVN, and now it's happening again with the old Naira notes. I just sincerely hope that Nigerians too can be open doing when it comes to some policies or some issues that borders on us.
Well, I really don't think it's entirely the fault of Nigerians, because if you introduce the new notes on the 15th of December and you're saying that the old note to be out of circulation, on the 31st of January. That's not even up to just about 45 days.
Yes.
And if you look at the population of the country, the number of persons who are even in rural areas without access to banks, but who have old notes with them, you discover that that deadline is not just feasible.
Okay, so we can understand those are the rural areas, but what about people in town? I mean, you've gone to the banks, you've seen that they're still dispensing old notes. You could enter into the bank and make a fuss about it, things like that. But then even the CBN, every one of them, the CBN, the banks, everyone has their own faults.
Yes, because I can't go to a bank and try to deposit my old notes, knowing full well that I won't have access to the old notes. So that's part of the issues that are surrounding the deadline. Right there on that story. But away from that story, you see pictures of residents of Katongo and Dambata local government areas swapping old Naira notes with new ones in Gombe and Kano State yesterday. You see 3 pictures there, people going to swap their old notes with the new note. That's relation to the banner headline on that story. And now let's move on. At the bottom strip, Labour knocks governors as states reject local government autonomy. This has been a very long battle between the federal government, the state government, and the local government, in terms of giving this local government autonomy. And now the state have rejected that. And you can see the Labour trying to criticize the governors for doing that.
Yes, of course, the Labour should criticize governors. The local government, we've all been saying that local governments have, either been totally, disregarded in all these aspects. Look at Osun State. We just held local government elections just late last year. So it's really important that we need to look into all of these things. And the local government needs autonomy, really. And so that, because they're the closest to the people, the grassroots government. So it's very important that governors do not stand in the way of local government.
Yeah, very important that they're giving the free hand that, as it's been said, that the state governments take their feet off the neck of the local government. And on page 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper, Islamic teacher bags life jail for defiling 8 pupils. Islamic teacher bags life jail for defiling 8 pupils. Now that's quite worrisome, but very good news coming out from the judicial system. People like this should get the appropriate punishment so as to serve as deterrent to others who might be already perpetrating or wanting to perpetrate.
Because I've always wondered that parents have been entrusting the kids to religious teachers more, because they feel they have not much confidence in conventional teachers again. And if we are still having people like this doing this to pupils, then even they deserve life jail terms.
All right. Away from that Islamic teacher story, on page 53 of the paper this morning, the Punch newspaper, WHO worries over fresh 170,000 COVID-19 deaths. WHO worries over fresh 170,000 COVID-19 deaths. That's on page 53. I said on the show last week, yes, that it's becoming worrisome. The number of deaths reported in China are 60,000 COVID-related deaths in 1 month. Combine that with all of the other countries where you still have COVID-19 ravaging them. It's totaling about 170,000 fresh deaths now. And of course, it's naturally worrisome for the WHO.
And we also have in Nigeria the case of diphtheria. So it's really, and the symptoms are similar as well. So people have to be, proactive as well to protect ourselves. If the federal government is not doing anything yet or seriously towards these things, we need to protect ourselves first, because we're the first in line in health protection for ourselves.
All right, away from that story, above the Punch, the Punch newspaper's nameplate this morning, federal government raises 14-man panel to end fuel scarcity, page 32. And finally, our petroleum minister is up and doing. Read that he chaired that meeting yesterday. Yes, and thank God. I think the petroleum minister has woken up to his duties. Probably just realized that he's still petroleum minister, but then it's good.
It's late, but not too late, at least.
Are you sure it's not too late?
At least they're trying to do something. Maybe something can be done to salvage the situation soon enough.
Okay, on the page 38 of that newspaper, The Punch, interest rate hike, job losses, crisis loom, warns OPS. Job losses, crisis loom, warns OPS. The Monetary Policy Committee of the CBN yesterday raised, the interest rate again, and a lot of persons have been saying different things about it, different opinions about it. But now there's the risk of job losses. There's normal crisis and all of that.
We know that we've been having issues like job losses and crisis looming every time, and I do wonder why we still make policies around having job losses, increasing the rate at which we lose jobs or we deprive people of all these job opportunities. We need to look into all of those things, that it's very, very imperative that we do things to bring people into the employment system instead of having them go off their jobs again. Because see now, the interest rate is hiking up everywhere. People can really get fuel. You have to queue, and then the money is even much. The price is high. So we need, jobs. We need things to do to make money,
to mitigate the effect of some of these things. Well, that's on page 38. You get more on that story on page 38 of the Punch newspaper. And on the still on the Punch newspaper, traders lament as Okowa shuts market for Atiku. That's on page 57. On Monday, we said
talking
something
about the president in Lagos
shutting down
the seaport.
Yeah, so we got to know yesterday that about 67 million naira was lost as a result of that particular act. Shutting down the port by the MPA.
It's funny how we always think that we need to shut down a system to try to raise another.
Yes,
it's really not. It doesn't really make sense. We have to start looking at things like okay. You had to shut down markets to get people. And now you're saying that these people are generic crowds. You had to force their hand to be there, because these people would not just want to sit at home. You shut down the markets. At least we've had campaigns in the past where you take the campaigns to the markets. So what happened now? When did we start shutting down some systems for others to work?
Well, I believe it's all in a bid to for the optics, to take photos and show that there was a large crowd, while not knowing that some persons in that crowd may be dissatisfied, because you can't. If you shut my shop, for instance, obviously I have nowhere else to go. I am forced to attend your campaign, and then you think that I'm probably going to vote for you, but I won't.
I'm glad it's in the papers that
yes, the traders are raising their voices, and it's all across political parties, not just the PDP or APC. We should stop shutting down one system to accommodate the other. They are not mutually exclusive. They can roll side by side. Just beside the nameplate, the last story on the Punch newspaper, Lagos projects 7.5 million train passengers monthly. That's after the commissioning of the Blue Rail and Red Rail line project. Now they're projecting 7.5 million train passengers monthly. Well, there's a large population in Lagos, and some of them may want to use. Yes, it's possible that they may even overrun this figure. Yeah, well, that's all on the Punch newspaper this morning.
All right, moving on quickly to the Daily Trust. The banner headline says Buhari chairs 14-man committee as fuel scarcity worsens. And the riders, DSS, Customs, EFCC, others members. President racing against time, experts. Hackers sell petrol for 500 naira per litre in Abuja and 600 naira in Ondo. I said it the other day when we heard that some experts were saying that by the end of the subsidy removal, we might be buying petrol at 800 naira per litre. And now see, if in Abuja people are getting 500 naira, and that's for hawkers anyway, and in Ondo they're selling for 600 naira per litre, just know, you can foresee that that's maybe true, because 600 naira is just 200 naira less to 800 naira.
Well, I think it is even worrisome and risky that people hawk petrol on the streets.
Yes.
Now you ask, where did they get that petrol from? If normal petrol stations don't have petrol, how do hawkers have enough to go on the streets to sell at this particular price? It again speaks to the fact that there are issues of sabotage, people trying to circumvent the system and then take out products and give it to those on the black market. I'm honestly disappointed at the Minister of Petroleum. If this is the time you're setting up a committee as fuel scarcity worsens, now Daily Trust is posting it that way. But this has been on since before December.
Yes.
People spent their Christmas, the Boxing Day, some of them on the queue trying to get petrol, some of them New Year Day, and they're buying at exorbitant prices. And now on the 25th of January 2023,
that's when
few months to the expiration of his tenure, decide to set up a panel. Then there's the DSS, Customs, and EFCC as members. The NNPC gave a false hope, saying they have 37 days sufficiency. We never saw that happen. Not even in Lagos, not even in Abuja. These things are not. It's not rocket science. It's clear that the Minister of Petroleum does not know what he's doing. If he does, he would be up and doing. Even the Minister of State for Petroleum, Timi Persiva, also is clueless. They can't just solve the crisis, and that's what it is. That's just what it is.
Right. Oh, well. All right. So we just hope that this panel would not be for nothing, and that it's going to bring out positive resolutions to help us, move past this scarcity problem. Right, just below that, PSC orders retiring police officers to go. That's on page 34. Okay. You begin to wonder why they're having to order retiring police officers to go. I mean,
well, there's a running battle between the PSC and the IG, the office of the IGP, about police recruitment and all of that, elongation of tenures. And sadly, that's what's been happening. IGP Mohammed Adamu, his tenure elapsed, the president extended. Usman Baba Kali's tenure will elapse soon. The presidency is planning to extend. So if I don't know, we've talked about it before. If you think that you don't have people you can rely on or trust,
then that's a problem.
There's a very big problem. If someone is retiring and then you have to extend the tenure because I feel I can work with this person, I can. Yeah, it's just. You
feel that you're the most competent.
It's just a show of shame. Yes, for the government.
But then it's not happening only in the police force or other arms of government. It's also happening in parastatals. You have the DGs, you have the MDs extending the tenure of some members of staff. And you begin to wonder why. So it's just that I don't know if they're taking clue from the president, or the president is the one taking that from. But these things need to go. If you're retiring, you already know that ahead of time. Please leave when it's time. And don't even seek extension. Even if you're offered, please turn it down.
Yes, it's embarrassing that you have to be told to, okay, you've overstayed your welcome, come and go. Very bad.
People should retire honorably. All right, just below that, CBN debunked 89 trillion naira stamp duty claim, says 370.686 billion naira collected by banks. CBN has been debunking a lot of news these days.
That's what happens when you are in the news for the wrong reason, when your head is in the news for the wrong reasons. We've spoken about stamp duty. I think Dr. Tunji Ogini was here to talk about how it is naturally not, the job of the postal service to collect, but the FIRS to collect. And now the CBN is saying it never collected 89 trillion naira stamp duty. It says banks collected. It's just the culmination of the back and forth between the CBN, the postal service, the FIRS over this stamp duty. And like you said, they've been debunking quite a lot these days.
Quite a lot. All right, on page 12, woman quits marriage, marries daughter's boyfriend in Kano.
Well, interesting funny one on page 12
story.
There. Yes.
Yes. All right, the bottom strip says, race to NAS, Buhari senatorial district, Kaita Dora set for epic battle. Buhari senatorial district there in the news again. All right, there's a pictorial story of I think Glow handing key.
Yes. We'll move away from that to the just below the nameplate on the Daily Trust newspaper. Some interesting stories there.
Yes, some interesting stories of Constitution reveals state assemblies reject financial autonomy for local government. And that's on page 13. We've been talking about autonomy for the local government. A state assembly rejecting financial autonomy for local government.
Very sad there. It speaks of the position of some analysts that the state houses of assembly have become a tool in the hands of the government, state government, to perpetrate evil against the local government. Because according to the Constitution, some section of the Constitution, I can't remember offhand now, the decision, the laws as regarding local government is made by the state houses of assembly. And the state houses of assembly in most states is a lapdog or lapdogs to the state government, which is not supposed to be. So the state government can influence the houses of assembly to make certain decisions or certain laws regarding the local government. So it's not surprising to see them reject the financial autonomy for local governments.
But the State House of Assembly is supposed to be there for the people to help, save, give them a better life and they're just there. They were elected by these people as well. And they're just there to make laws to suit the purpose of the people, not just the state. I mean, not to suit the purpose of the ruling party. They're supposed to be autonomous in that aspect as well. But then this is what we see, what we have been seeing in Nigeria. But we are calling for a better, better attitude, better decisions from the state houses of assembly. All right, just beside that on page 23, yes, New Naira notes National Assembly Emefiele defer on deadline extension. Yes, the National Assembly is on the part of deadline extension. Emefiele is saying no, the date remains sacrosanct.
Of course it does, and he really said that strongly yesterday. Says it doesn't. There's no apologies to anyone, who is offended. And I'm beginning to think that I should have taken the bet I was offered about the extension of the deadline, because I felt that as a person, as someone who is responsible, someone who is responsive and in touch with realities, you should naturally extend the deadline. But doing otherwise shows just direct opposite of what I just said. So I've lost good money because of Murphy Baby. I don't know why.
All right, so on page 35, Gombe governorship court dismisses PDP suit seeking to disqualify Governor Inuwa Yahaya. Court has dismissed that already. More of that story is on page 35. All right, just before we leave, still in captivity are the 11 schoolgirls of FGC Baninyari who have spent 589 days already in captivity. Now, one student of Bethel Baptist High School, Kujama, has spent 561 days. And just like every other day, we've been hoping, and we're still hoping, that more will be done to secure their release from captivity.
Of course, we hope that the government swings into action. I'm beginning to think that these children have been forgotten, but I hope that that's not the case. Well, moving on to the Guardian newspaper this morning. The Guardian newspaper, Wednesday, January 25th, 2023. Banner headline: Old Naira notes, CBN insists on January 31 deadline. Sean's calls for extension. A number of riders denies scarcity of new notes. Senate urges CBN to soft pedal. Rep seek review of daily withdrawal limit. Ndume, as a senator, I haven't seen new notes. Learn from UK, Huriwa not CBN over last minute cash swap. That's the story, and those are the riders that are on the face of the Guardian newspaper this morning. That issue cannot just be overflogged or overemphasized. There has to be an extension. That's the logical thing to do. Some persons, I saw the 200 Naira note for the first time yesterday, and but I've seen the 1,000 Naira note. I've not seen, I think I've seen the 500 Naira, yes. I just saw the 200 Naira notes yesterday for the first time since December 15th. And that's not because I've not been trying. I've been trying to, you go to the banks, it's not there. They tell you they don't have 200 Naira in stock. It's short. You go to the POS operators, they still have old notes. You go to the ATM, still dispensing old notes. And it's just not going to work out.
It's not, because so far it seems the 1,000 naira notes is the most in circulation so far.
And interestingly, the CBN was saying that the 200 naira note will be the highest denomination in the ATM. So if your highest denomination projected is not in circulation, how do you go about that? You just can't, do that or make it work. Well, away from that story at the bottom strip, but beside that story, you can see the picture of President Buhari in Lagos doing some commissioning, commissioned the Blue Line Rail and some other big projects in Lagos there. And at the bottom strip, Buhari appoints Arase as PSC boss amid furor over IGP's tenure elongation. As on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper, federal government reinstates COVID-19 travel protocol. More countries restrict Chinese travelers, which we've also said on the show. At the moment China began to record a resurgence in COVID-19, I think the normal thing to do was to have restricted travel from that part of the world, because you can't take the risk, you can't gamble with the lives of people.
Yes. So from the continent, as a matter of fact, you should have been restricting people, travel from that area, from that continent, because, they do all this travel, they do all this inter-travel. So that part of the country should have been, of the continent should have been cordoned off from, entering other countries. All
right, very quickly, we'll move on to just below the nameplate. Expect earlier than normal onset of rainfall, floods in 2023. NIMET warns. That's on page 3. Please get ready and let's take this warning seriously. Yes. Part of what the federal government said last year was that they issued warnings early in the year, and both state governments and individuals disregarded that warning.
We don't know that. And that's why we know this one.
Yes. So January. Please begin to take caution and make provisions for the floods. Dangote Refinery not part of projects for Buhari commissioning. That's on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. And IPC seeks safety for journalists ahead of 2023 polls. That's on page 4 of the Guardian. Very important there that the journalists are protected in next month's election and that of March to avoid some very sad stories, brutalization, brutality, high-handedness, not just protection from political thugs now, but from even security agents, overzealous security agents. And then the last story on the Guardian newspaper, Buhari keeps mum. Commission's Blue Line Rail, J. Randall Center, as on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. I'm afraid that's where we'll leave it on the papers this morning. Before we go to the interview segment, we'll be bringing you some discussions around the meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee yesterday, the hike, the raising of the interest rate, the refusal by the central bank to extend the deadline for cash swap. Yes, and of course the implications for us as a people. Just stay with us after this break. We'll be bringing our guests for you.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Eva is pounding current events, traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast. Detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
All right, thank you so much for staying with us on the show Morning Spring on Western Spring Television, where we bring it to you as it is. Time to start the conversation this morning on the interview segment. And we have joining us live on the show an economic analyst, Mr. Paul Alaje, who joins us live via Zoom. Good morning, Mr. Alaje.
Good morning, and thank you so very much for having me.
All right, thank you for joining us. Now, we go straight to what happened yesterday at the meeting of the MPC. The CBN increased the monetary, the policy rates, now the interest rate from 16.5% to 17.5% to tame inflation. Can you take us through what exactly is the interest rate? How does it work, especially in regards to the ordinary people?
So the interest rate is not the interest on the money you borrowed. That one is the bank interest rate. But when we talk about monetary policy rate, it's so significant. It's a benchmark for the rate interest you can get on your savings. It also has implication on the loans you get. So it's a benchmark for a lot of things. When central bank controls it, it means money supply will reduce. That is, people will now need to borrow at higher costs. I will give you an instance, which I believe you must have discussed on your show, maybe previously. What is popular right now for DMOs and many Nigerians regarding many amounts of money that have been borrowed by government is called the ways and means. The government borrowed money from central bank in form of advances, and we call those ways and means. The regulation is that the cost of ways and means is 3% plus NPR. As of today, yesterday, I beg your pardon, the Central Bank of Nigeria and the entire Monetary Policy Committee, at least based on majority vote, agreed that the NPR should be increased on 100 basis points from 16.5 to 17.5. The implication is that as Nigeria is owing over 23 trillion in NPR, that means 20.5% is the interest rate in the next 1 year. What does it mean for President Buhari and any other person that is succeeding? It means even if we borrow no other money, even if we do not borrow money at all, by this time next year, 4.6 trillion naira plus is added, not billion, trillion, is added to the debt profile. That also means that more than almost 50% of what we hope to generate in revenue is what we will use to service ways and means, not our over 40 trillion naira loan. No, we are talking of just ways and means because the interest is so high. So there are times where when people are watching us this morning, they borrow money from commercial bank and CBN increases rate. You see commercial bank writing letters to their customer that sorry, the money you borrow, the interest will now increase because rate has been increased by the Apex Bank. So this rate has a lot of implication. It is not just meetings where some people sit and they put on tie and make decisions. It in fact affects business. It has implication on unemployment. It has implication for the kind of money government can have access to. A lot of implication, if you ask me, that has. So let me also talk about how this will reduce inflation. So when people don't have access to a lot of money, even though commodities there, nobody's buying, price will be forced to crash. You saw the inflation figure released by the National Bureau of Statistics, which reduced to 21% plus from what it was in previous years. It's as a result, not that the prices of commodity are reducing, but people don't make demand. People people are poor. Over 130 million out of 211 million. More than 50% of our population are wallowing in poverty, living in multi-dimensional poverty. So a lot of implications. So when you don't have access and you cannot eat decently, you want your coat not according to your size, is now according to your material. So people don't buy the supply side is to come back to equilibrium, to come back to a point where people can make demand for it. So it appears that price is low because money to buy is no longer available. But it also has implications for employment. Unemployment is expected to surge, to be very high. And when economy is hard and unemployment is hard, what you are going to see is a form of stagnation. And I will explain that to you. When the central bank raises interest rate, Monetary Policy Committee increase interest rate, more people are supposed to invest. I'm talking investors now. They don't have access to cheap loans or funds for them to put in business. It is when they invest capital that they employ people. So if they don't invest or they are not able to upgrade what they have currently, you see that it will be challenging for more people to be employed. Those who have high costs of running business and the banks are writing them that they should come and service their loan with higher rate. They will be forced to reduce their labor. They will be forced to reduce employment. Again, all of these we interpret that unemployment would increase. And when you look at unemployment figure, it's even projected to go higher. Out of the three of us, if we are within the labor force, it is said that one of us is unemployed. And you also, apart from those that are underemployed, people who are maybe graduates of any higher institution, but could not get a job, all they could do is to be a cleaner in Antipath and primary school, quote unquote, or to be a teacher somewhere. Meanwhile, the capacity, the level of education is far more than what the person is doing today. So it's a whole lot when interest rate is increased. And central bank is saying, well, the core mandate of the financial institution is not to generate employment. The core mandate of the financial institution is stability. Stability in two things. First, stability in price, which is measured through consumer price index, which you now call inflation. And more importantly, stability in FX, that is exchange rate.
So let's look at what you've explained now, talking about the MPR and the hike in the interest rate. You said something about banks writing to their customers. How does this affect loans that the ordinary customers would want to collect? Now let's not look at it on the industrial scale. But does it really have any implications on someone trying to get a loan?
And you can get loans from commercial bank less than 28, 30, 32%. It's not possible. You cannot get loan less than that. And I think with this increase, you might even be seeing higher than that. Gone are the days when MPR was 12% and you could get loan at 25%. Today, be ready to pay a minimum of 30% for commercial bank. And for microfinance bank, be ready to pay as high as 72 to 84%. So let's because they will tell you it's per month, come and pay 6% per month, multiply that by 12, come and pay 7% per month, multiply that by 12. So the cost of doing business is higher. What business are you going to do in Nigeria that will give you 72% profit within a year? And that is not to pay salaries, just to service the loan.
Let's do very quick mathematics now. If, say, for instance, I want to borrow ₦1 million with this current interest rate, what are the implications for me as a person?
If you are borrowing for a commercial bank, be ready to service it with 300,000 naira per year. If you are borrowing for a microfinance bank, be ready to pay 720,000 to 840,000 per year.
So that's saying we'll be returning about 1.8 million naira.
Yes, from a commercial bank. For a microfinance bank.
Wow.
That's what you'll be doing. And the real cost of loan is whatever it costs you to access it. Whatever it costs you. So if you go to money lenders, be ready to pay 3 million for your 1 million within a year.
All right, Mr. Alaje, what do you think? Do you think that the CBN could have taken another route other than this? Like, what should they have done differently?
Honestly, the CBN is crossing. It has very few options. is to choose between the devil and the deep blue sea. Because if you say keep interest rate static, you are not sure if you have gotten to the point of deflection where inflation will continue to reduce. It will be too early to say let's hold interest rates. But what we know is that CBN cannot say reduce interest rates. So there are two options: either to keep interest rate at 16.5 or to leave it to increase interest rates. You know, where some of the one person even voted for 150 basis point. That means to increase interest rate to 18%. So the options are very, very, very few for the central bank, and each of the options it has its own implication. The implication of the choice is what I've just interpreted to you.
Okay, so the cash reserve ratio is left at 32.5%, while liquidity ratio is kept at 30%. We also like to make a proper perspective of
Please,
this issue.
Can you repeat the question?
I said the cash reserve ratio, the CRR, was maintained at 32.5%, and the liquidity ratio was also kept at 30%. We'd like to put this in perspective. What do these two ratios mean for banking and the economy generally?
I can tell you, bankers and bank MDs may not be able to tell you this, but the banks are also struggling. So for the 1 million that you took to the bank, since you have started with 1 million example, the implication is that the bank is supposed to keep within the vote 300,000, doing nothing, just keep it within the vote. Then the bank is supposed to take to central bank 325,000 as cash reserve requirements. So that money goes to the central bank, 300,000 goes to the bank. What the bank has is less than 30%. So it is the 30%, less than 30%, that the bank now lend out. And in most cases, the bank will use that less than 30% to buy treasury bill from central bank and bonds. So those who need the money don't really have access to it, because in my own understanding, the liquidity ratio is so high, cash reserve requirement given to central bank is also so high. So it's like stifling the banks because of both liquidity ratio and cash reserve requirements.
Okay, so the Emefiele now, the governor of the central bank, Godwin Emefiele, said that there's been some sort of deceleration over the years, year-on-year headline inflation, that the persistency in policy rate hike has caused this. Do you agree with Emefiele's assessment that the reduction in inflation is as a result of the policy hike?
I can tell you, policy increase in NPR certainly play some roles in bringing down inflation. Because what the central bank is doing, beyond the policy, even this returning of old notes has its implication. Central bank wants to control the way money is spent. He has lost grip of how people have access to funds over the years. That is why the CIC, that is cash in circulation, according to the central bank, over 80% of cash in circulation, they are outside the bank vaults. That is, the commercial bank store is outside it. So when we say we make policy and over 80% of money in circulation is not affected, then the policy made by central bank will not yield any results. So central bank is now saying, go and return all the money before January 31st, or not before January 31st, so that we can now trace where the money went to, who collected what. If we want to make policy, we now know how to trace it. So that's exactly what central bank is doing. And when people return the money, it's now showing that money supply has reduced. Because people that have the money, it has gone to their bank accounts. For most people, when you look at the new notes, I don't know which part of Nigeria you are now.
We're currently in Osun State.
Osun State. Yeah. What volume of access do you have to the new notes? If you go to a commercial bank or microfinance bank today, in Osogbo, in Okuku, in Ila, in Ife, in Ikire, in Ilesha. How many of the new notes, 1,500 and 200 will be here? So when people are taking it to the bank and bank says it's not available, we open accounts for you. So it's a strategy to rake in the old notes. Then people are now forced to go digital, cashless in some areas, and in some areas they are giving people the new notes, which of course authorities can control.
Okay, so before we talk about the new notes now, like properly, the CBN is saying that the redesign of the Naira note has huge moderating factors to price development on cash. How do you see the redesigning of the note affecting cash flow, affecting cash, like you put it, price development on cash?
Okay, so I've just explained that for you. All the central bank is trying to do is to have control on cash. And when you look at the redesigns, I've said it before the money came out, that I don't expect the quality to be as high as the previous quality. This is because when you look at what we spend to print 200 naira in 2011, and you look at how much we are using to print it now, it's a big cost to central bank or minting and printing. It's a huge cost. So why you are seeing that money, they are so light? I'm sorry, when you compare 80 grams and 75 grams or 70 grams, you see that they are not the same. But if you are not somebody who use photocopy machine or printing machine, you may not know. But take your time, fill the old notes and the new notes. You see the difference. Slight, but that has saved the country some costs. Also, in the old notes, you see multiple color. Pick the 1,000 naira old notes. You see multiple color, different shades, although you may not notice it until you look at it carefully. Now, take the new notes. Everything is almost a single color, apart from some security features. They're almost the same color. So, central bank has now been able to moderate the cost of printing. That's one. Two, it's also able to moderate the volume of printing to the public, because people have now returned the old notes and you don't have reasons to hold cash because there is now a ceiling on cash. So it's able to moderate on both sides.
So are you saying now that the circulation of the new Naira notes, are you saying that it was a deliberate act by the CBN, the shortage in the circulation?
Honestly, based on what central bank says we need, it will be lower than what you have in the old notes. You may not believe it, but it's just the truth. It's just the truth. So when people say they don't have access, they go to the bank. If you don't have access to the new note, they say, okay, don't worry, open a bank account, so that they can forcefully reduce money supply.
So how is this going to augur well for people in the rural areas? How is the CBN going to manage that area?
Well, CBN has said recently, I asked different agents, about 1 million of them, according to the central bank, who will go to rural area to support. Because when you look at people that are in rural area, it is believed that they should not have more than certain amounts of money. Maybe 5,000, maybe 10,000, maybe 20,000. But can I be honest with you? In the real sense of it, there are people in rural area that have access to millions. And I will tell you why. As somebody who deals in grain, if you want to buy paddy, which is the input for rice, the farmers will tell you they don't want bank transfer. What they need or what they require is cash. So just how are you going to, as farmers, transport yourself from somewhere in the rural environment and run to the nearest bank, going with a lot of cash and going back again? So I think central bank will need to rejig or to rethink this strategy so that it can fit into the very persons that we have as Nigerians.
All right, so now let's come back to the cash, the new notes issue now. The CBN and the National Assembly are at variance over the deadline. From your position, where do you tilt to? Who do you think should yield ground? Should the National Assembly come to terms with the CBN's position, or should the CBN reconsider its stance vis-a-vis yesterday's events?
I think both needs to yield ground, honestly. I think that the 7 days mentioned by the central bank governor is unrealistic. Yesterday, 2 days ago, and of course yesterday I was in Port Harcourt. Every transaction I did in Port Harcourt, they all gave me old notes. Last week, I was in the ancient city of Ibadan, as well as Kano. Some part of the days last week I was in Ibadan, and the other part I was in Kano. And I can tell you that in the two ancient cities, all transactions that people gave me as change when I pay for article or pay for anything, they were all old notes. In some of these cities, some ATM gave me new notes, 1,000 naira, but some other ATM still gave me the old note. I'm talking about myself. Now, as I talk to you, I've never seen what a 500 naira note looks like. I've never seen it. The 200 naira, I've never seen it. But I've seen the 1,000 naira from ATM. Our central bank said they should be loaded. So I've seen that. So I'm wondering, what's sporadic change will the central bank put in place within the next 6 days so that we can say the banks will stop dispensing old notes? Because as I speak, old notes is still being dispensed, and you are an organization that is reputable, around the country and in your state. You can do an opinion poll. Let people call you in and tell you how much of old note and new note they have access to, and it will shock you. I was on a national radio station yesterday in Abuja in the evening, and the anchor had asked, "Is this new note not circulating?" I said, "There's no need for us to debate it in the studio. This is a live program. Let people call in. People call from Mina, Bida, they call for Plateau, they call for Benue. All says there is a crisis. But one said there is a crisis in the community in Niger State because the rural people want to pay. People are already rejecting the old note. So it's causing confusion, and they don't have access to bank. Where they were at the time. So it's a lot of issues. I am going to suggest to central bank to extend the days by a few more days, maybe 10 days, maybe 15 days, but before the general election. So that's one of the reasons why the central bank is making this policy is not forfeited. Yeah, election is 25th, maybe till 20th of February, maybe till 10th of February, maybe till Lovers Day, 14th of February, and after which people will know that yes, we've been given substantial period of time to extend. But you see, this is the most important thing. It's obvious that central bank structure working with commercial bank and microfinance bank is not sufficient enough. When I was much younger, in the 80s, there were some changes that happened to currency. And also in the 90s, we saw government changing some paper notes such as 1 naira to coin. I was spending 50 kobo as notes. Today, 50 kobo is not even in existence. So the 50 kobo note was changed to 50 kobo coin. A lot of people that had the paper notes, they had to return it. But because banks were even not as available as we have it today. So there were people that were organized by commercial banks to go to different rural communities. They went to the rural communities and people were giving them at no cost. So when they got to the commercial bank gave them commission on such collection. Central bank with commercial bank, among other players in the financial institution, we need to be proactive. This collection will come with a cost. Everybody is avoiding the cost, but somebody must pay anyways. This is what we must tell the central bank and indeed other banks within the financial institution to please sit up properly and ensure that they bring a system and structure that can help withdraw all these old notes in circulation.
All right, so before we let you go, Mr. Laji, since last year, towards the tail end of last year, there have been some issues about the fuel scarcity, the crisis, and all of that. The fake queues not disappearing, fuel price hike going as high as 600, via hawkers on the street. What do you see is the impact of this sustained fuel scarcity, if it goes on for longer than it has already gone, on the impact on the economy and the average Nigerian?
The strategy is for Nigerians to be psychologically affected, that even if we make it 250 today, we are ready to pay. So, and if you look at this strategy, General Babangida tried it. He succeeded after a while, but it did not succeed up to the point of removing subsidy fully. General Abacha tried it. He succeeded for a while. President Olusegun Obasanjo, he tried it as well. President Jonathan, in fact, that led to a national strike that he had to reverse when he noticed that election was in view. President Buhari, this is not the first time during his tenure that we had this fuel queue. Recall that when he first came to office, he had to increase price that led to partial call for strike by labor, which of course failed. There were queues here and there, but eventually he had to increase. So what you see is that this queue may linger until the point that what government can accommodate, which is 3.3 trillion naira in the budget, because as I talked to you, the request for subsidy is even higher. People should ask why. What are we paying for? Is it that the price of commodity globally is increasing? The answer is not true. The answer is no. The real thing we are paying for is devaluation. Devaluation, because PMS is a dollar-based business. Each time we devalue our currency, be ready to pay more. Economists that are advising governments to keep devaluing, they don't mean well for the authority. Because when you devalue, your foreign debt will decrease. 2021, we added 1 trillion naira to our debt profile for borrowing no money. Because we devalue, now we are devaluing. The cost of devaluing is now showing in PMS. As long as we keep devaluing and we don't have local producer, I am sorry, the price of PMS will keep increasing. And I don't think government will have the will to remove. And because many of us talk about PMS, let's ask women how much they spend on kerosene, between 800 to 1,000 per liter. We have a lady in the studio. So you and I may not know how much is cooking gas. What was it 2020, 2021? What is the price of cooking gas today? So if PMS is removed, Nigerians should be ready to pay a minimum of 400 and a maximum of 700 for the PMS. When subsidy rather is removed from PMS, absolutely. Will Nigeria be able to do this? I doubt very much. I have not seen any leader who is able to even move the price to 80 cents. At any exchange rate. When you calculate 80 cents today, I tell you, Nigerians always repay their leaders that remove subsidy either from PMS or kerosene with non-re-election. Whether it is 4 years, or it is 3 years, or it is 2 years. It has been there over and over. Well, even when the military were in office, Nigeria do everything to ensure that the military leader is removed. Why? Because this cut across all aspects of our life. Even the civil servant in Osogbo who is working with government or in any local government in Osun State, if you are transporting yourself from Ife to Abere, to work every day, what is the price today? So ask yourself, if subsidy is removed, that will be ×2. Will Osun State government, as we know today, be willing to multiply salary by 2? It is not just to talk about the economics of removing subsidy. What is important is ability to pay by our people. We know that Dangote refinery will soon come mainstream. So, but with the Dangote refinery coming stream, government have limited option. It's either you make the subsidy part of the crude you are giving to Dangote, that is the way subsidy can remain, but if Dangote is going to pay, be ready to pay higher prices. And it's good news for the company now that there is capital. So if they have their own marketers or distributor, they now give you option. If you want to go to Dangote field, this is the cost. If you want to go to other field, that is the cost. So in the coming period, coming months, Nigerians will be faced with options. And that is why I advise it's important for us to choose our leaders correctly. Go beyond rhetorics. We need you journalists to engage them more and ask critical questions as it has to do with our well-being.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning, Mr. Paul Aje, who is an economist and an analyst of some of the, economic and financial situations in the country. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Oh, well, that's where we leave the first leg of the interview. When we come back from this break, we'll bring you our second guest to continue the conversation.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever is pounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast, detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
On this show, we answer all your sporting questions. The whens, the whys, the wheres, and even the what ifs. Sports Spring is that show that will give you that new lease of life you've been looking for in sport journalism. Join me, Joseph Atewe,
And your sports Amazon, Nengi Ernest.
on this station, Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Let's talk sports. Let's speak the most universal language of the world.
Aminatu, the legendary Queen of Zazzau, is best known to historians as Queen Amina of Zaria, an old walled town and capital of the Hausa state of Zazzau. Amina was a great warrior and the first woman to rule the ancient kingdom of Zazzau. Her 34 years as queen witnessed an unprecedented expansion of Zazzau by conquests. Queen Amina of Zaria belongs to the class of Amazons by the might of her army and her strings of conquests. She opened Zaria to trans-border trade and was said to have initiated kola nut cultivation in the ancient kingdom. The Hausa Muslim figure was born in 1533 and died in 1610.
Nearly a month after it officially began circulating, residents of Osogbo, the Osun State capital, like Agbola Omar Dayeshi, now have access to the new Naira notes via automated teller machines ATMs.
First thing I can notice is that the currencies are already been changed to a new currency, and I love it. It's a very good thing. So thank for the federal government for everything.
The cash withdrawal limit, so you're able to take more than 20,000?
Yes, as from today, at least I withdraw like 50,000 from the ATM. So everything were all new. There were new notes.
This development comes a little over a day after the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN), upon complaints by Nigerians, directed banks to load their ATMs with the new note to enable customers to have access to them even when banking halls are closed. Now, it is not just via the ATMs that the new Naira note can be gotten. Bank customers such as Ajibade Oduyele have also been able to get the note while making over-the-counter transactions, although the CBN has asked banks to stop this.
When I came to the bank last time, I withdrew from the bank counter. Among the currency they gave me, new currencies are among.
Mr. Oduyele's experience is similar to that of Mrs. Olayemi Adetunji, with the difference being that she was greeted with reluctance to accept the note by traders.
I was able to be paid with the new currency note, 1,000 Naira, and I was glad because it's a very beautiful note, and I was able to spend it actually, and everybody that I gave to, they were excited, and maybe, but some people are saying that the new note is maybe, being printing on their fingers. They are afraid that maybe they will not be able to spend it. But I was glad to collect it, and I was able to spend it.
Despite this cheery development, some bank officials who spoke off record told Western Spring Television that the new Naira note, especially the 200 Naira note, were still not in full circulation as they did not have it. This appears to be true as some bank customers, including Zainab Adewoye, still could not see or get the new note both over the counter or via ATMs 20 days before the old ones will be phased out.
I went to withdraw money over the counter. They gave me old notes.
Following the directive of the Central Bank of Nigeria, it appears as though banks in Oshogbo, the Osun State capital, have begun to comply. A visit to automated teller machines, ATMs, show that the new Naira notes have been dispensed, and customers can also access this new Naira notes over the counter. However, the issue of the scarcity of the 200 Naira new note must be addressed, as well as the apathy of some persons, including traders, towards the new notes. Emmanuel Ujadugile. All right, you've just taken a listen to that report there that was done on the 11th of this month. That's about, how many days now? 14 days ago.
Yeah.
You know, how time flies. That report was done on the 11th of this month, looking at how much access people have to the new Naira notes. And you could hear from that report that the 1,000 Naira note was in circulation via ATMs and over the counter, but the 200 Naira note and the 500 Naira notes are still scarce. And to make light of these issues, we're joined now on the show by an ex-banker, Mr. Segun Adebi, who is also a financial analyst. He joins live via Zoom. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the show this morning.
Good morning. Good morning, viewers.
All right, so what do you make of the fact that there's still a scarcity of the new notes, particularly the 200 Naira note and the 500 Naira note? You know, seeing as the central bank says that the 200 Naira note will be the highest denomination in the ATMs. This is 25th of January, and these notes are still scarce.
While the idea of the redesign of the Naira at this critical time is laudable because of the people doing counterfeit currencies and all that, it is still surprising that 6 days to the deadline, most bank customers do not actually have access to the new Naira notes. For instance, yesterday I have a friend who needed 4 million Naira from his corporate account, and all he got from the bank were old notes. So I don't know how the CBN wants to, work around the January 31st deadline for the old notes to be turned in for new ones. Yes, the 1,000 Naira bills are actually more available than the 500 and 200. I don't know why that is so, but the CBN should, try more to enforce the banks to make the lower denominations also available.
Okay, so now from your experience as a banker, you've been in the sector, how easy is it for both the banks now and the customers to manage or cope with the redesign? Like when was an introduction of new notes, how easy is it to cope, for the bank to return all of the old notes to CBN, get new ones, and also the customers? How does it work?
I think there's more difficulty in the bank customers returning their old notes to the deposit money banks than for the deposit money banks returning the old notes to the CBN. The CBN regulates all the banks in Nigeria, and we all know that. So it's very easy, but
I think the 3-month window for turning in the old notes for the new notes is too short. And then don't forget that we have an election in another 30 days or so. Some feelers are that majority of these new notes are being mocked up by politicians, which makes them very unavailable for the bank customers. My personal opinion is that the CBN extends that window probably till a week after the general election, so that everybody that I really pity the POS operators the most now, because there's a limit to the amount of money you can keep in cash. That's for the old note, so that the deadline doesn't catch you unawares.
So, as an ex-banker, the CBN has said that the redesign of the note is to, strengthen the economy in a way. So, if you are recommending to the CBN now that they should extend the window to a bit after the elections, how do you see that auguring well, with the projection of the CBN for this new Naira notes?
Yes, I think it's not, if you have 1,000 Naira old bill, for instance, what you get in return is also 1,000 Naira, in the new bill. So for now, I don't see the only laudable aspect of the reserve in Naira is in the area of security. And I've even heard reports that kidnappers are now asking for new notes, whereas those new notes are not even available to the customer. So these things really take time. And, we're in a panic mode now, both for the politicians and for, businesswomen and people that deal in cash on a daily basis. So I strongly feel the CBN should extend that deadline by probably a month, so that it will accommodate. For instance, you have Nigerians who have been abroad, probably on study and all that in the last 3 months, with some of those old notes with them. How do they turn those old notes in to get the new ones? It's usually a problem. It's usually a problem.
Okay, so part of the reasons that have been advanced for the redesign of the Naira note, especially ahead of the election, is to curb vote buying, to fight corruption and all of that. Now, you are also in the political sphere. Do you think that this is a good strategy? How well do you see it fighting corruption, particularly the menace of vote buying?
Yes, it's a good strategy. If you notice what has been happening recently to the CBN governor, the politicians across board are not happy with the redesign of the Naira at this time. Why? Because most of them do not have the opportunity to stack, money to buy votes and all that. It's a good strategy from the CBN and the federal government. However, everything is not about politics. What of those that are doing business and they deal in cash almost on a daily basis? What of those that do their businesses majorly in the rural areas, they don't have access to? For instance, here in Osun, there are some big towns that don't even have deposit money banks in there. How do you explain, this short deadline to such people? For the general election next month, it's a very good idea, so that people can vote to their conscience and then do what is right. Vote according to your conscience, not when politicians bring money and change the idea of where you want to vote. So for politics, it's a good idea, but at the same time, business must not stop.
Let's go back to the point of sale POS operators now. They seem to be the hardest hit because they are the intermediary, the middleman between the banks and the people, especially in the rural areas. And some of them have large stock of these old notes, with them. And unfortunately for them, they still go to the bank. As of today, they will still get old notes. And you have just 6 days to this deadline. How will this affect their businesses, in terms of giving out the new? Some of them don't even have the new notes yet.
It's not even in the area of exchanging the old bills for the new bills. For instance, the new CBN law says access to cash for a personal account is not more than 500,000 a week. How do you want a busy POS operator who deals in millions on a daily basis to cope with this? Yes, now the problem is to even access the cash is a big issue. And then your BVN is linked. You can't get to UBA now, for instance, and say, okay, let me take 500,000, let me move to Zenith, because your BVN is linked to those two deposit money banks. So it's a big problem and then most Nigerians lately, the last 6 months, we've had to POS operators instead of going to queue at ATMs of the banks or even getting to do with, contending with crowd in the bank and all that. So I think there's a way they should tinker around it, look at the way they could tinker with the policy to accommodate this set of business people in the country.
Well, we'll still talk about the POS guys now. These people who try to bridge the gap between customers and the banks themselves. Now, do you think that there should be at least a leeway for them? They should be given some sort of reprieve and probably have their own limits increased. That's if they can prove that you're a POS operator, you get some sort of a waiver.
Yeah, in Nigeria, we've always had problems with data. We don't have a structured database. If it was an economy that had a structured database, we would know the number of POS operators operating around the country and the volume of businesses they do. So for me, I think when this policy fully takes effect on the 31st of January, there should be special consideration for this set of people. For instance, the POS operator that trades in like 1 or 2 million in a day, his business has gone down by a quarter. It has gone down to a quarter because his access to cash in a whole week is not more than 500,000. How do you want that policy to impact on such a person's business? I think the deposit money banks have a lot to do in this area with an approval from the CBN to accommodate this set of people.
All right, so let's come back to the CBN now and the commercial banks. Do you think that there is enough liaison with the CBN, between the CBN and these banks, seeing as they're still dispensing old notes?
Yes, we said this earlier, the new notes are not available. Some people have the opinion that these new notes are even also now being mocked up by politicians. They are being bought. Yeah, I mean, it's an allegation. Yeah, I mean, it's not a rumor. It's not confirmed. But the thing is, if you are packing the old notes off the shelf, there should be availability of at least 70% for when we say we want our economy to go digital and all that. There should be a provision for replacing the old notes with the new ones, but it's not available. And I'm just talking of yesterday. A friend went to take 4 million in the bank, and all he got, there was not even a single bill of the new Naira, and we have 5 days left. So what happens to such a person if he is not able to return? The banks should talk to the CBN and find a way around this in the last 5 days so that the transition can be seamless.
Okay, so before Temitope talk,
yes, I would like to ask again. This fault now, the buying of the notes as alleged, or the scarcity, is it the fault of the CBN now or the commercial banks?
I think it should be more of the commercial banks. The CBN keeps campaigning via SMS and TV adverts and everything in the last 3 weeks to say, go and return your old notes to your deposit money banks and get the new ones and all that. The CBN wouldn't have done that if there have been no provision for the replacement. So for me, CBN should look more at the volume of the new Naira bills they are giving to the commercial banks and be sure that these new notes get to the customers. Because like I told you, in most banks today, at least in Osogbo, those new notes are not available. I have not seen the 200 Naira bill, for instance, since this new policy started. So it's not out of place to say the new notes are not available.
But does it bother you, Mr. Debi, that the 200 Naira notes now that are supposed to, because I spoke in the report we aired some minutes before we brought you on, I spoke to some bank managers off record, and they told me point blank that they simply do not have the 200 Naira notes. They don't have it. It's not like they're not willing to give it up, but they don't have it. They have the 1,000 Naira. They have some of the 500 Naira notes. But does it bother you that the notes that's supposed to be the highest denomination in the ATMs from 31st of January are not yet in circulation by this time?
That's why I called earlier for two ways now. CBN can look into, yes, do we have enough of these new 200 Naira note deals? Then yes, if we have enough of the 200 Naira bills and we have distributed to the deposit money banks with acknowledgements, how sure are we that these 200 naira notes are getting to the customers? Because actually it's through the ATMs and other e-channels that these new notes can actually get to. We have people, even in Australia, who have not seen the new naira bills, whether it's 1,000, it's 500 or 200. But like from my experience, I know the 1,000 is, more available everywhere through the POS and the other channels and all that. But the 200 naira note is very, very scarce. You hardly see, I have not seen it, for instance, but once since this policy came into place. So the CBN should look more into that area in the last 5 days so that the deadline will not catch so many people unawares.
All right. So before we let you go, I'm going to ask you what you make of some of these other issues, the redesigning of the new naira note. How do you think that the CBN can address the apathy of people towards the note, especially traders and transport workers who still do not have faith? There have been some pictures making the round, some poorly cut notes, some notes fading when you clean them with some methylated spirit and all of that. How does the CBN address apathy towards the note? How do you help people understand that this has come to stay and you have to accept the notes?
It has to do more with orientation. Even after the deadline of 31st of January, you need to
well, we seem to have issues connecting with Mr. Debi and some network issues there that we have. We're hoping he was going to answer the question. That's one of the problems affecting the new naira.
We need to do more enlightenment. And for me, when you usually change currency like that, at least I was not a child in 1984 when it came. The apathy is normal, but over time, with proper enlightenment, and you need to let people know that, look, your 1,000 naira old bill is the same as your new 1,000 naira new bill. You understand? People will get used to the new system. Even the old notes that we are talking about, some were washing away. You wash your clothes and bring it out and all that. So it's not a new thing. I've seen the 1,000 and the 500. I don't think there's anything wrong with the new bills. And coupled with the fact that there are security features on those new notes, I think people should, get used to it, and then we move on from there.
All right, thank you so much. We'd like to thank you for joining us on the show this morning. Mr. Segun Adebi is an ex-banker, someone with experience in the financial sector and also a financial analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good morning once again.
All right, have a great day. Well, that's the conversation on the new naira note we talk about. It seems that the CBN has said it's not yielding grounds, but there are still calls for,
by some economists and analysts are saying that the deadline should at least be extended by a week or two. And we heard the bankers saying that it should even be extended by a month.
Well, we'll be seeing how the CBN responds to some of these calls in the coming days, especially from the National Assembly. But that's where we leave the show this morning, the interview segment of the show Morning Spring. I will be coming back to show you who is trending, what is trending. Interestingly, something is coming out of Katsina, where President Muhammadu Buhari will be from tomorrow and on the 27th. I'll let you know what's happening there on Spring Trends.
Well, I'm Temitope Ajidala Oluola. Thanks for joining us on the show this morning. Have a nice day.